let's mention Harry. I mean, we know he's coming over in September. Would he be welcome to come to Balmoral this summer? Could you ever see that happening?
I personally don't. I think that his bridges are well and truly burnt.
Not a warm welcome at Balmoral. I can't imagine it happening. The story comes up every year.
I think it depends who's up there. I think the king has made it clear that the door will always be open for him. So I think if the king was up there on his own,
I don't think he has made it clear. I think that was a meeting between a press secretary who was escorted outside and was photographed with Harry's PR people that got what they wanted. I think the King's position at this moment in time is nothing has really changed.
I wouldn't be too sure.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, it's big enough to put. You've been to Balmoral.
Yes, I have.
There's lodges on the estate.
Absolutely.
There's Craig Owen Lodge. I mean, there's more enough to have Harry in there and have a little dinner together.
Yeah, and there's lots of cottages on the estate. So yes.
And keep William and Catherine away. And then
but you're assuming then that the King has forgiven everything and he's moving on with what happened when Harry and Meghan totally insulted his wife and insulted the country at the same time in what they've done. I think it's very difficult position for the King, but I don't think a lot has changed.
Do you think they'll be watching Meghan's new Netflix show next week? Because we will have to be talking about that in future shows. We're going to have to be watching it. You don't think they're all going to be sitting around the big TV in Balmoral watching it?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I don't think an awful lot of TV will be watched in Balmoral, to be honest.
Yeah, well, most of my history is based on what I see in The Crown. They seem to love walks, barbecues,
reading as well,
reading.
Yeah, they have their books to read.
Yeah.
But I think
fishing,
painting, yeah, reading.
Oh, it sounds bliss, doesn't it? And Peter Phillips and Harriet Spurling maybe there. I mean, they've just announced a couple of weeks ago. They said that they're engaged. I mean, there's plenty to talk about this summer.
Yeah, they have a nurse on hand. That'd be great.
Gosh, I wonder what sort of wedding it'll be. I worked on his last wedding to Autumn Kelly, which was fantastic. So I wonder what sort of wedding they will envisage this time round.
I would imagine one that's profitable and appears in hello.
you cynic.
Oh, Rob.
I'm sure that it's. I quite like Peter Phillips. I've met him a few times. I think
he's charming.
Well done. Glad he's
just to point out that the first wedding pictures were sold to Hello, weren't they?
They were.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and then the engagement.
Most things that happen there are sold, but. No, I quite like him. I've interviewed him. I quite like Peter Phillips. I'm glad he's found some happiness. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, she seems lovely, actually, the dealings we've had with her. You mentioned about Prince Philip. Right, so where do we stand on this? VJ Day, which we've discussed last couple of weeks, and we discussed today, the King and the Queen went to the National Memorial Arboretum. It was quite an emotional event. I mean, I did VE Day and I did D Day, and they were pretty powerful. And sometimes people forget about VJ Day. It's like the official kind of end of the war. It was the end of the
Prince Philip and all that.
Prince Philip was actually out there fighting in the Pacific when it was signed back in 1945. Prince Harry, we learned this week, has laid what his aides describe as a discreet note and a wreath paying tribute to the forgotten heroes of the Pacific War, but also to Prince Philip. Previously, he's not been allowed to leave a wreath at the cenotaph. And as I say, he didn't attend, but he got a friend to lay a wreath. Was this a PR stunt? Is this something that Harry is inextricably linked to the armed forces? He's spoken in the past about how much he admires his grandfather. Where do we sit on Harry's actions here?
Well, the reality is it was obviously a PR stunt. I think the person who laid it was the PR man. But
we don't know that for sure.
Well, the bottom line is, if you didn't want it to be a PR stunt, just leave it there, and I'm sure somebody would see it, i.e. it would get passed down to the press eventually when someone else sees it. I think it was just a little bit too slick, and it's part of an Operation Rebuild Harry.
So, there's been a lot of talk about whether Prince Harry would be welcome at Balmoral this summer, but honestly, most think that ship has sailed. His bridges with the royals seem pretty burned, and while the king has technically left the door open, nothing really feels like it's changed. Even if there's space on the estate for everyone to keep their distance, it doesn't erase the hurt from the past, especially the way Harry and Meghan publicly criticized the family. As for Meghan's new Netflix show, don't expect the royals to be gathered around watching it. Life at Balmoral is more about quiet walks, barbecues, reading, and painting, not binge-watching TV. Meanwhile, there's happier news within the family. Peter Phillips recently got engaged again, and people are already speculating what kind of wedding he and Harriet Spurling might plan. His first wedding sold photos to Hello Magazine, so it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. On another note, the King and Queen recently attended a moving event for VJ Day, remembering the official end of World War II, which often gets overlooked compared to VE Day or D-Day. Prince Harry, who wasn't there, quietly arranged for a wreath and note to be placed in tribute to the fallen and to Prince Philip, who fought in the Pacific during the war. But the gesture sparked debate. Was it a heartfelt tribute or just another carefully managed PR move as Harry tries to rebuild his image?
Also, I think
That's going on.
if I was advising him, and if he wanted to say something, put something out as a statement. Don't do a sort of a what's perceived to be a stunt, and almost take a bit of polish off the actual main event.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And also, the King was there. As I say, I thought it was incredibly emotional.
Yes.
You know, the whole when the soldier stood up, the former captain, and he saluted to my brave king. I thought that was all very emotional, and only you could see the tears in Camilla's eyes.
Clearly, both of them, and the King.
And the King was really moved. I thought it was terrific and showed you what it was all about, really. And again, I think it was the King's day, but I think that the Prince of Wales and the Princess of Wales, given that this is probably the last time there's a significant anniversary to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the end of VJ Day. Prince and Princess of Wales absolutely should have been there.
Well, a cynic, and that might not be me, but a cynic might argue that Prince Harry maybe saw that as an opportunity and he was able to leave a letter there to show that he had some kind of presence at the event.
I think you're right in that. I think Harry, you know, he had a lot of people respected Harry for the Invictus Games, for his own service. But I just don't think, as Alice quite rightly says, you don't need to do stunts. I can almost hear the derision coming out of the Duke of Edinburgh's mouth. So
and also using him as a sort of a tool.
Okay.
He just wouldn't like that.
No, he wouldn't. And also, it wasn't about him. It wasn't about the Duke of Edinburgh. It was about those veterans, as you rightly said, who probably won't be here for a next significant anniversary.
I think so, yeah.
So in Harry's note, I'm pretty sure he did write about the forgotten heroes, and he did thoughts about their heroics out on the front in the Pacific. But you're right to point out that it was largely about Prince Philip.
He'd hated that, Matt. He really, all the time, whenever anybody, go through any of the interviews, you know, when they start talking about his service, this is a man who was mentioned in dispatches. Yeah. This is a very brave guy, you know, and he fought, he hated people talking about that. He would have just said, look, you know, there were many other people doing that. He couldn't stand people, like any true hero, you know, somebody who'd served. It wasn't about him. It would be about his shipmates. It would be about those he served with and those who lost their lives, more importantly. It wouldn't have been about him. He would have not wanted that, not the Duke of Edinburgh. No.
And also, the King didn't talk about his father, did he?
No. The mention was, of course, was the references all to his grandfather as king. But I mean, he was president of my club in and out, and the Duke of Edinburgh was just not about himself. He was, you know, he was a serviceman. He was not about himself.
Yeah.
Well, you called it. We between the three of us, we've suggested it may have been a deliberate stunt. I'm surprised that you think that Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, would have been opposed to Harry writing this letter and referring to his kind of heroic.
I think, as Rob rightly said, it's not about him. It wouldn't be about Philip. It'd be about all those people there on the day.
And the ones who died.
Yeah, absolutely. Serving.
We will remember them. He just wouldn't have wanted to be remembered. You know, he would. You could always hear him saying, "Yes, I was there." You know, whatever. What difference does it make?
As I said originally, I just think if Prince Harry did want to pay tribute to these people, he could have put out a statement on the day, rather than going and doing something quite so graphic. and sort of.
He can't really win, though, can he, Harry? I mean, he just seems to get things wrong. And
But do you think, Rob, is it because he doesn't have the sort of senior level of advisors advising him what to do? He's sort of cut off in California.
I think it's because he's out now. When you're on the outside looking at him...
But where's the statesman? Where are the Lord Geitts? Where are the David Mannings? Where are these sort of big hitters?
Remember, you were there, Elsa, how difficult it was to advise him and the people around him used to have real trouble.
But when I was there, there were those statesmen. There were the Lord Janvrins, the Lord.
Yeah,
Geitts.
they bring in people like David
gravitas.
Manning,
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
with real, with people
and experience of the
or
world.
even people like Jamie Lather Pinkerton,
Totally.
who was a senior officer in the SAS.
Yeah.
And they did listen to him, and Harry did listen to him. Look, sometimes I feel a bit sorry for Harry. I think he's very much because he's on the outside. It's very much because of the things that he's done wrong.
And he's cut off, isn't he?
And he's cut himself off. But then again, he was advised by his own father to think very carefully.
So basically, the whole conversation here is about how Prince Harry handled things during the commemoration of the VJ Day anniversary. The focus was very much on the king, the veterans, and honoring their sacrifices. It was a deeply emotional moment, with even Queen Camilla visibly moved. The king himself was clearly touched, and that's really what the day was about, the veterans and their legacy. But Harry kind of complicated it. Instead of putting out a simple statement of tribute, which might have come across as dignified, he left a letter. And while it did acknowledge the forgotten heroes of the Pacific Front, many felt it came across as more of a stunt, something that drew attention away from the main event. Critics pointed out that it wasn't about Prince Philip, who himself hated the spotlight when it came to his own war service. He always insisted it was about the shipmates he served with and those who lost their lives, never about himself. The larger issue is that Harry seemed stuck. Without senior advisors around him anymore, he's making decisions in isolation, and that often leads to missteps. People close to the situation suggest that if he still had those experienced voices, the seasoned statesmen and military figures who once guided him, things might have played out differently. Instead, being cut off in California means he's often seen as out of sync, and unfortunately, whatever he does tends to be judged harshly. At the end of the day, the commemoration wasn't about Harry at all. It was about honoring the veterans who gave everything, and the king carried that moment with grace. Harry, meanwhile, continues to walk that tricky line where even good intentions can be taken the wrong way. And really, that's the takeaway here. Sometimes silence or a simple, respectful statement speaks louder than any grand gesture.